Hey guys, Key here from Kegland, talking to you about our new flow control ball lock disconnects. Now this is a Kegland invention. We made this product not that long ago. We put it on our website and we haven't really done much of promotion about them. So I thought we'd better do a video because it really is a product worthy of an explanation, and it's such an awesome product. We really want to make sure you know the full benefits of how to use it. Now, typically in the past, a lot of you guys, if you wanted a flow control device, you probably would have had to get one of these. And although they're really handy, you got the flow control device right here, and you can adjust for those different pressures. And a lot of people find that especially convenient if they're switching from, let's say, a lager, and then they want to do a wheat beer with a higher carbonation level. It's kind of a lot easier to just, move a lever like this than it is to extend your beer line or change your beer line diameter just for that beer style and then change it back later. So look, flow control devices definitely have their place and they make things really convenient, I guess. But there's a few different problems with the flow control devices being on the tap like this. Firstly, all flow control devices create a small amount of turbulence. So having it at the tap end where you've got no head pressure, it's not really the ideal scenario. You don't have as much ability to account for any error in the system. And I might explain that a little bit later. The other thing is it adds physical mass to the tap body. Now you'd know for most of the towers that you have or fonts, the taps sit, essentially warm on the outside of the font. Now, sure, you might cool the shank down a little bit, and some of that might get conducted into the tap itself. But generally speaking, the tap is fairly warm. Now, a flow control device will generally increase the weight and mass of a tap by around about 30%. So on our taps, for instance, if you get the non-flow control tap and you get the flow control tap, it adds about 110 grams worth of additional weight to the tap. You probably think, why does that even matter? I don't really care if it's a bit heavier. Well, the problem with that is if you've ever got a beer system, you'll know that if you pour that first pot of beer, you've ever wondered why you get a little bit more head on that first glass or pint? It's generally because that beer flowing through the tap has to chill the tap down first in order for the tap to start pouring really well. So if you've got more and more metal essentially or mass in the tap, it's going to mean that you have, a bigger heat sink which you have to cool down before you can start pouring beers really nicely. And that's really not ideal either. Lastly, if you want to get a forward sealing tap, which I would recommend to anyone, because forward sealing taps, definitely they're more sanitary and they're a better way to have your beer dispensed, and and that's really fantastic. But the other problem with a forward sealing tap is if you have a flow control device, by definition, that flow control device is going to probably sit behind the actual seal itself, and nobody has worked out a way to have a spring mechanism for a spring return tap work with a flow control device. So that's why, look, we haven't been able to solve and engineer that problem yet. And definitely none of our competitors have been able to find a good solution for that either. So, if you do want to have a spring return tap, really, they're not perfect in that respect. So to overcome these issues that we have with the flow control tap, we came up with the flow control ball lock disconnect. And let me show you how we set this one up. It's really no different to any other disconnect. We only make these in the MFL threaded type. Most people are getting the MFL threaded type anyway, so they can use these duo-type fittings that make setting this type of stuff up really easy. I've got some 5mm internal diameter beer line, and I've intentionally made this pretty short, so I've only got like 1 meter. So typically this wouldn't really be long enough for this type of system. But with a flow control disconnect, it doesn't really matter. So I've basically poked that in that end. And then on the other side, I've got my nylon Pluto gun here. So this is just a fairly inexpensive plastic Pluto gun a lot of newbies use. So I've got my duo-type fitting. I should also say all the new Pluto guns, all the new nylon ones that we have, they now have a duo-type compatible barb on there. So with this duo-type fitting here, I can just push it on like that and then push the beer line in the other side. So that makes it really, really easy for you guys to set up. Now straight away, you can see the difference. Instead of having the flow control device down the tap end, I've now got it where it's going to be clipping on top of the keg itself. And let me show you why that's so important. So what I've got in this image is a direct draw keg system. I've got the beer keg itself, which is going straight to the beer line and then out the tap the other end. So this is very typical for a kegerator setup, for instance. So I might have a gas regulator and a gas cylinder here pushing gas into the actual keg itself. And normally you'd have the gas regulator set at around about 14 PSI or about 1 bar pretty much. The main thing I wanted to point out here is the fact that the pressure actually drops as it goes through the beer line like this. So, you might go halfway through the beer line, for instance, and the pressure will have dropped, from 14 PSI down to about 7 PSI or so. And that's really important because as the beer goes through the beer line, we really need the pressure to drop to a level where by the time it gets to the tap, there's very little or no pressure at all. Because if we had a significant amount of pressure at the tap here, it would just be shooting out the tap really fast and it would be uncontrollable. We wouldn't be able to capture that into a glass without it splashing all over the place. Alrighty, so I've got this keg sitting at 15 PSI. That's normally what I would probably dispense this type of direct draw keg system with. However, to really test it, I'm going to crank the pressure up to double. So I'm going to crank it right up to 30 PSI. So that's a little over 2 bar. So at 30 PSI, to be honest with you, if I was to use one of these taps, or any flow control tap where I've got the flow control device right at the tap end, to be honest with you, I think they would really struggle. You'd end up probably pouring quite a lot of foam because it's hard to take up all that resistance in the flow control device at this end of the beer system. So on the other hand, I've got this flow control device. Now I've already set this at approximately halfway on the knurled little thumb screw here. And you can see even with this very, very short 1 meter beer line, the results are quite good. You can see I'm just pouring the beer there like that. And really I've got a very, very controlled flow there. I hardly have any foam at all. And even at 30 PSI, the thing works great. Now, a lot of you guys, if you're taking a little mini portable keg system like this down to the park or you're taking to a barbecue to dispense a few beers, because you don't have any beer line in this scenario, a lot of you guys will be forced to have to use a flow control tap. So what you might find is you have to turn the tap on, and if anybody forgets to turn the tap off, you have to actually manually turn it off. Now, if you accidentally bump this at your picnic or the keg falls over, sometimes the tap handle can turn on and then you can empty your keg. However, if you use a flow control ball lock disconnect, you can still use the spring return inside the tap as well. So that's kind of a really handy feature. So it means that I can go down to my park, I can get the tap handle, pour myself a beer like this, and just let go of the tap handle and automatically shuts off. So that can be really, really handy when you're having beers on the go and you want to make sure your friends don't accidentally empty your keg at the party. Anyway, that pretty much concludes it for today. If you want to know anything else about the stuff that's coming out, why not join our Facebook group? Our Facebook group's a great place to share information with other homebrewers just like yourself and tips on how to brew. The other thing is we give out all our discount codes on our Facebook group too, so you definitely want to join up there. The other thing is if you want to hear about any other cool stuff we're inventing or working on, we often release it on YouTube first, so definitely subscribe just down the bottom right hand corner there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll be sure to keep up to date with all the cool stuff we've got coming out. All right, thanks guys, see you next time.